Hi, my name is Derek Su, Executive Coding Officer for KITE, and welcome back to the free KITE Python course. Here on KITE, we're on a mission to spread knowledge of new technologies across the world. Today, we're going to continue learning about another sequence in Python called tuples. So what are tuples? Well, a tuple is a sequence of values just like a list. However, unlike lists, tuples are immutable, which means that they cannot be changed once you've created it, and they're also comparable, which means that we can sort lists of them, and hashable, which means that you can use them as key values in Python dictionaries. So let's look at how we can create a tuple in Replit. So creating a tuple is the same as creating a list of items, but instead of using square brackets, you would use parentheses. So I'm going to say T for tuple, and the tuple will contain 1, 2, 3, 4. So this right now, if we print it, and I'll also print the type of it, you can see that it is a tuple that contains 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also make a tuple without the parentheses. This is also considered a tuple. And you can also create a tuple of just one item, but you have to make sure that a comma comes after it. And then that way it knows to be a tuple, because otherwise it'll just be an integer. And just like a list, there's also a function to create an empty tuple. So if I just do tuple and then open close parentheses, that will result in an empty tuple. So now that I've shown you how to create a tuple, I'm just going to show you some basic functions with tuples. So first, I will make a tuple, t, and this time I'm going to use the tuple function, which takes a sequence as an argument, like a string, a list, or a tuple actually. In this case, I'm going to send a string. I'm going to say apple. And what this will do is that it will take each element in this sequence and it will split them up into a tuple. So if I print t, this will be apple, but each letter will be its own element in the tuple. And I can also get a specific element, just like lists. So if I do t in index 1, that will be a p. And I can also slice. So if I do t from 0 to 3, the result will be APP. And remember that tuples are immutable, so if I try to change the first letter to a capital A, it will not work because items cannot be reassigned in a tuple. So a way to get around this would just be to completely replace the tuple itself. So if I begin with a tuple of capital A, and then I add on the rest of the initial tuple by slicing it, this will essentially removes the old tuple and creates a new one. So actually, let me print this. And the result should be a tuple, but instead with a capital A. So now let's look at comparison operators when working with tuples. Since tuples are sequences, that there's a special way that Python will check to see if this tuple is less than this other tuple. So first, it'll compare the first two items, and if they're the same, then Python will go to the next two, and so on until it finds one pair of items at the same position that are different. And then it will compare those elements just like single numbers. So let's look at a couple of examples in Replit. I'll begin by creating two tuples. One will be 1, 5, 16, and the other one will be 1, 6, 12. And I want to compare if the first one is less than the other one, and I will print the result. So if we run this, you can see that it will be true because first it'll look at the first element, so 1 and 1. Those are the same, so Python will move to the next one, which is 5 and 6. And since those are different, it'll compare those two numbers. And since 5 is less than 6, the result is true. And note that even though the final number of 16 is greater than 12, Python does not look at it because it stops once it finds the first set of elements that are the same. So if we were to change this 5 into a 9, let's say, now if we run this, the result will be false because it'll go to 1 and 1, and then it'll go to the next one since it's the same, and then it will stop at 9 and 6 and compare those since those are different. And then since 9 is not less than 6, the result is false. In addition to comparison operators, there's also the sort function, which works similarly, and it sorts by the first element, and in case of a tie, it goes to the next element, and so on. So now I'm going to show you an example in Replit, where we have a list of words, and we're going to sort them from longest to shortest. So here's an example of a program that uses the sort function, and I know this looks like a lot, so let's look at this step by step. So first is the variable txt, which is just some text. And next is a new variable called words, which is txt.split, which means that we take this text and we split it up by the space and put each word into a list, which is the words variable. And then we create a new list called t, and for each of these words in this words variable, we're going to append a tuple that consists of the length of the word and the word itself to t. So at this point, this list t contains tuples that are the length of the word and the word. So if we just go according to the sentence, that would be 3, comma, but as one tuple. Next tuple would be 4, comma, soft. Next tuple would be 4, comma, what, and so on until we get to the end of this sentence. And next, we're going to sort this in reverse order. And so what this will do is that Python will now look at each of these tuples and sort them, first by comparing the first element in each tuple, which is the number, and then if those happen to be the same, it will compare the words. So in this case, this tuple would go in front of this tuple, so it would be moved to the front because 4 is larger than 3, and we're going to be sorting in reverse, so greatest to least. But in this case, if we're comparing these two tuples, 4 and 4 are the same, so then Python will go to the word itself, and then what comes later in the alphabet, so it will come before soft, because we are sorting in reverse. So once t has been sorted, we're going to create a new list called res, which is result, and then we're going to loop through t, the lengthened word in t, and then we're going to basically extract the word from t and put it into res. So now res is a list of these sorted words and does not contain the length of the words. And when we run this, it should just be the list res, which is the list of sorted words. So you can see it goes from longest to shortest. Now let's look at assignment and tuples. One unique aspect of tuples is the ability to have tuples on the left side of an assignment statement and then a sequence on the right side of an assignment statement. And this basically means that we can assign more than one variable at a time in one single line. So let's look at this in the text editor. First, I'm going to start by creating a variable called words, and words will be a tuple that contains hello and world. And let's say I wanted to assign each of these words to their own variable. I can actually do this in one line by saying first, comma, second. So I have two variables here, and that equals words. So what this does is that this variable called first will be assigned hello, and this variable second will be assigned world. And if we print this, you can see that the result will be two strings of hello and world. And for some reason, if you wanted to switch the order, we could do that by saying first, comma, second equals second, comma, first. And so now first will be assigned to the value in second, and second will be assigned to the value in first. So if we run this, this will now be world hello. So this is a pretty useful function of tuples. Just note that the number of variables on the left side must equal the number of elements on the right side. So if we were to add an additional element here, such as an exclamation point, this no longer works because there's 2 variables and 3 elements, so there's not enough variables to store what is inside of words. So let's look at one way this could be applied. Let's say that I have an email, and that email is like john@gmail.com. I could say that the username, and the domain equals email.split, and I would split it at the @ sign. So now this email.split, once this function runs, we will have a list that is John and gmail.com. So uname will be assigned to John, and domain will be assigned to gmail.com. So if we print this, we can see how the email has been assigned to these variables. Thank you for listening to today's Python lecture about tuples. If you have any questions, join our Discord server, linked below. There you will have complete access to forums where KITE representatives can answer questions about concerns or confusions on exercises. Also, make sure to follow our new Instagram and Facebook accounts for KITE updates. Have a great day.